Okie dokie. So in this video, I want to show you guys a little bit what you can do with this thing called Google Sheets. It's basically familiar. It's very similar to Excel if you have a PC. But since everyone can use Google Sheets because everyone can go online, I'm assuming if you're watching this video, I want to show you that because I think it's going to be very useful to you. One, for our next chapter here in Algebra 1. But also if you do any kind of lab report in maybe physics or chemistry, and I used it a lot for sure when I went to college and started again doing lab reports. So here you're just going to go to sheets, google.com, and here's a bunch of templates that you can start off with, and of course it shares it with any of those other Google Docs or whatever. It shows you all your old stuff. Here I'm just going to start a new one, so start a blank one. And it will open up for you. So here you can title it at the very, very top. It's still loading in. Okay, so if I click this, this lets you change the title. So I'm going to just say Intro to Google Sheets here. Enter to save that. And you can see as you do anything, like in most Google Docs, it will save it as you go along. So here's the last time it will tell you when it's saved. If I type in random stuff, it says it's saving, and now it has been saved. Okay, so let's kind of navigate this. So each of these little things here, each of these boxes is called a cell. To select any cell, you can just click on it. You can also navigate the cells by using your arrow keys. If you want to type in a cell, all you have to do is click on it to select it. So I'll start in this blank one right here. So this cell is D4, and it highlights the column and the row. So I'll just type in. Now you don't actually have to click this little text box up here if you don't want to. You really don't need to. So once I select the cell, if I just start typing in Mr. Chang and then hit enter, then there's what the cell says. It says Mr. Chang. Now when you notice that when I hit enter, so let's see, I'm typing in it and I hit enter, it automatically brings you down. So this is really helpful for if you're filling out a data table. So maybe it's, we'll say the day, and I don't know, maybe I'm recording the temperature. So on day number 1, there's enter, and then day number 2, enter, 3, and so on. And suppose the temperature was, I don't know, 70 degrees, and then I enter, it automatically brings me down to the next one. Then maybe it was 66, then maybe it was 80, and so on. Okay, if you want to select a bunch of cells, you just have to click on one cell and then drag it like you kind of think you would. And if I want to delete this all, I just have to hit delete or backspace. Okay, notice here, let's suppose I want to change this cell right here. One way to do it is to select it and then hit delete, and that clears it. But I want to, instead of doing that, you actually don't need to do that. You can just type directly in it. So notice here, I've just selected it, and I want to just type in now, I'll put my name again, Mr. Chang. I did not have to backspace or delete it if I didn't want to. I could just type right over it. Now, here's the thing you want to be very, very careful of, because let's suppose I want to just edit a piece of it. So let's suppose, let me actually start over. Let's pretend I typed in, here's how a lot of people spell my name, the wrong way, Mr. Chang with an A. Okay, if I want to fix that, I could just type over it and spell it correctly. Or if you go to the cell, so highlight the cell, or select the cell, and hit enter, that will bring you in here, which now you are typing directly in the cell, and you can edit it as you so choose. So I want to delete that A and just put in the E there. So again, to do that, you have to hit enter inside the cell, or you could double click the cell and that would also do the same thing. Notice if I didn't do that, then going left and right doesn't do anything. It just lets me go again through it lets me navigate through the cells. Okay. There are two basic functions I want to talk about. So let's just make up some data here. So I'm going to have fake data. I'm going to have in here, let's see, I'm just going to put in a bunch of numbers. Okay. So let's pretend in this yellow, and let's see, we have a bunch of stuff up here. So these right here let you format the actual text of your cell. So if I want to make these all bold, I can select them all and then make them bold if I wanted to. You got to italicize them, strike through them, and so on. A thing that I think is really helpful is often highlighting the color of the cell. because that usually draws your attention to, hey, look at this, this is important. Okay, so what I'm actually going to do in here is I'm going to add up all of these numbers. Okay, so I'm going to put right here, this is the sum. To do this, and this is really cool in Excel. This is why I think it's helpful to use Excel, and you can't quite do this in Desmos. Well, you can, but it's a little bit trickier. So in my opinion, Desmos, while a little bit easier to look at and like use for very limited applications like in class, Google Sheets is a lot more versatile and you can do a lot more with it, although it does take a little bit more learning. Okay, so here's what you're gonna do is I'm gonna hit equals. Now look at when you hit equals, it brings up a bunch of suggestions too, because Google Sheets is pretty smart, and it asks you, what are you gonna do? Now these are just suggestions, you don't have to do these, but notice here, one of these functions says sum, S-U-M, and then in parentheses, the cells. And it says, again, this is suggested based on what your data is. So the reason it's suggesting it is because Google, well, it knows kind of what you're doing, oops. Or it's kind of making predictions, oops, sorry about that. It's making predictions about what we want to do. So a lot of times when I have a column of numbers, and I want to do something with those numbers, the two big main things you would want to do, usually, are add them all up, or take the average of them, or do something like that. Excuse me. Okay, so I'm gonna hit equals, and I'm gonna hit in sum, and there's a bunch of these other types of numbers, and it kind of shows you, it gives you a brief summary of what they are. I don't actually know what all of these do, because I usually just use this, but the cool thing about Google Sheets is because it's a Google product, it's very easy to search out what these do. But I'm just gonna use sum, so I'm actually not gonna type it in. So I'm gonna hit sum, and I need to tell it what numbers does it want me to add up or find the sum of, because that's what the sum is, right? Is the answer to an addition problem. So I'm going to open up my parentheses, and now it asks you what data do you want to add up? And so I'm going to close this because it's getting in the way, but I want it to add up from cell. What cell is this? This is A2, so I'm going to type in A2. To go from A2, and I need to go down to A8. So I'm going to hit colon here, and that tells me it wants everything from A2 to A8. You have to use it. I believe it is case sensitive, so make sure you use capital A's here. Sorry, actually, I should have done this earlier, but I'm going to zoom in a little bit here to make it a little bigger for you. There we go. Hopefully that's better. Sorry about that. Okay, so I'm gonna type that in, and if I hit equals, also something that's really cool is that it will show you a little preview what the value will be right here. If I enter, that is blah. So this cell is, so the sum of all these is 35,946. Now, if you look at the actual cell, that's what the answer is. But if you look in the text box or the formula box up here, it actually tells you what it is doing. One thing that's really cool is that so let's pretend you entered your data into this table incorrectly. It happens all the time, right? So maybe this 6 isn't supposed to be a 6, it's supposed to be a, I don't know, 66. What you can do is you can just change that 6, to 66, and look at what happens to the sum. It automatically fixes it and adjusts it. So that's why this is really, really cool. Okay, if you had done it by hand, and let's pretend I had my calculator and I typed in, instead of using the actual Google Sheets formula to find this, I just did it by hand and I typed in, okay, so I know the answer is 36,006. Okay, but like, oh wait, maybe I made a mistake here on this 4, and it was actually supposed to be 14. If I type in 14, it did not change this, because look, what is this cell? You've only told it that the cell is 36,006. You didn't tell it to automatically add up these numbers right here. Okay, so let's pretend you had a lot of data and you didn't want to, well actually let's pretend I want to add in a number right here. I'm just gonna make it up 18. So I want to add up this column and this 18 here. So I'm going to say equals the sum, and I'm going to start the parentheses. So what numbers do I want to add up? Well, one thing you can do is you can drag actually to select. So right now, when you see this little, I don't know if you can see it, but this little underscore bracket kind of thing, it's in like select mode. So if I just drag here, or if I click anywhere, you're telling it what cells to add up. A blank cell usually ends up being 0, by the way. So if I want A2 to A8, I can drag down here, and that tells you right there it's going to add up these ones. But I also want to add in this 18. So how do I do that? Well, one way to do it would be to do this and just drag it over. But that would add up all how many cells is all 14 of these cells if there was all numbers in them. One way you could also do this is to drag those, and if you don't want to select all of these other columns for whatever reason, and you want to just add in one more number, I hit comma, and that says now plus that cell. And it also highlights it to tell you where they are, which is very helpful as well. And if I close the parentheses now and hit enter, and that is right there. The last little function I want to show you is the average function, and this works just the same way. So if I want to find the average, so I'm just going to highlight this so we know what the cells are. The average cells we'll do in green, I guess. I can do equals average. Oops. And by the way, since it's suggesting it for me, if I just hit enter, it will automatically do it. And so it fills it in for me because, again, it's predicting what I want to do. But let's pretend I didn't have that. I'll open up parentheses. I want the average. Let's pretend that you want the average of all of these numbers and the little 18 over here. So I'll drag down, select, comma, add in this B4 cell, close parentheses, and I'll give you the average of that. Okay. So that's a little intro to what you can do with Google Sheets. There's tons more you can do. You can also add in charts here, which I'll show you in the next video, and make data tables and all that good stuff. So play around with it, and if you have further questions, please let me know, and I will see you in the next video. Oh, I did actually want to show you one more thing, and this is how you can do just simple math in here if you wanted to. So let's pretend I wanted to add up, let's actually draw this equation right here. Oopsies. So let's pretend I wanted to do this in Excel or in Google Sheets, because you totally could. I could do 24 times, I don't know, 15 plus 5. Okay. So that wouldn't be, ooh, actually, how about the square root of this? Okay. So what we could do, and this is a little bit maybe more complicated than it needs to be, but we could definitely do weird stuff like this, because I could do equals and then type in the equation, because this cell will be, when you hit equals, you're basically telling it, hey, do this calculation for me. And I'll hit 24 times, so times in Excel or Sheets. Sorry, I get Excel and Sheets confused a lot because their commands are actually very, very similar. I think most of the time they're actually exactly the same. So I'm going to hit times, and then I want the square root. Now, how can I do square root? This is another function that you could put in there, but you hit SQRT, and it gives you the square root of a number. Now, what do you want the square root of? Well, you're going to put in the parentheses here, 15 plus 5. If I enter there, it's going to do that calculation for me. And because it's a computer, it's super smart, and it knows your order of operations correctly. Now, I'm going to just, one more thing here is, let's pretend I want to do this. Like this same calculation, but with some of these numbers. And so I could do equals, let's pretend I want to do 456 times the square root of, I don't know, we'll just go with 66 this time, A5. And that is what your answer would be. So I just thought to show you that because I think that's actually very helpful as well.